Hello, my name is Alan Reynolds, and this is my story. Uh, I have a testimony of God's grace, of healing, in a world where so many of us don't get to see the miracles that we believe God for, that we see so many people sick every day. It's really inspiring to remind myself that I'm a living testimony of God's healing work. And so it all started when I was about 8 years old. I was having stomach pain that was so bad that I was doubled over, missing a lot of days of school. I had so much pain that I would sometimes lay on the bathroom floor writhing in pain and not be able to do anything about it, except to have my mom there to comfort me. And when I was 10 years old, the pain got so bad that I started missing days and days and up to a week of school. Although at this point I had never vomited, never had any problem with eating. It was all stomach pain that I kept taking, gas medicine and, went to see doctors. And, my dad was a physician at the time and couldn't diagnose me. And when I was 10, I finally ate something that tipped the scale, threw up, and then was hospitalized for a week. And while I was in the hospital, they did exploratory surgery on me to remove my appendix A to see if it was appendicitis, but also to try to decide what was wrong with me. And even after that surgery, they weren't able to decide or to discern what my real problem was. There were a lot of diagnoses, everything from I could have colon cancer to, any number of just, gas issues, but none of those things seemed to be it. But while I was in the hospital, my mom prayed for me. And for the first time I had ever heard prayer language. And after being in the hospital for a week and missing my last week of 4th grade, a sad little 10-year-old at the time, I was well. At least I thought so. So, without having any major complications for the next 5 years, essentially, I had stomach aches here and there, but nothing like when I was younger, until I got to age 15. And then I started getting, to put it out and be very candid and very transparent here in my audience, I started to have all sorts of problems with my colon, which is your large intestine, and really my rectum, getting things like hemorrhoids. And at that time I went to go see different doctors. Gastroenterologists couldn't tell me what was wrong with me, and I developed something called a fistula, which is kind of like a parasitic hemorrhoid that they said could get so bad if it continued to grow. At this point it was about the size of a quarter in diameter and circumference, and I had this growth sitting in me that threatened to grow into my large intestine and into my digestive system and threaten other vital organs in my lower parts. And I had to have surgery during spring break to have that removed. Most people at school, my teachers, nobody even knew what was wrong with me, because that was an embarrassing thing for a young guy. I'm just in high school at the time. I didn't tell anybody about my problems, about what was going on. And since I was little, I had always felt rejected. I'm only 5'3". I couldn't play sports like the other kids. I felt like, I wasn't loved enough. The girls weren't looking at me. They were looking at other guys, and I felt like I wasn't close enough to my dad at the time. And all that self-rejection, as well as the stress of trying to overcome it by overcompensating, like so many of us do. Trying to do everything and be everything to everybody in order to make myself feel like I had some value and some worth, drove the stress that my dad at the time thought was triggering the stomach aches. And so, without telling anybody besides my family, my immediate family, I went and had surgery to have that fistula, that parasitic hemorrhoid thing removed my winter break when I was, my spring break when I was 15. And I came back to school and I had surgery bandages and just sat through classes, really ashamed and afraid, and only those who were in my family and people who were very close to me even knew about it. After that, I thought that maybe I was done with whatever it was that was causing all this illness until I was 17. I started having those really, really bad, chronic, intense, debilitating, really, stomach pains again. Still without a diagnosis, not anything conclusive. And so I went to a different gastroenterologist, a different digestive system doctor, and they diagnosed me with Crohn's disease when I was 17. And so in order to combat it, I had internal bleeding. At that time, my large intestine was bleeding and swollen. I was having those stomach pains. I had blood, going to the bathroom. I had been through 2 surgeries already, and ashamed, overcompensating, dealing with the self-rejection that caused the stress that led to these disorders. The Lord showed me later, self-rejection was the root of it. Because when you look at what Crohn's disease is, essentially it's your immune system attacking your digestive system. And so putting that into spiritual terms, it's just like if you, because you don't like yourself, are attacking yourself, like so many of us do emotionally and mentally. My body was doing it physically. I didn't like me, so my body turned on itself and manifested itself as Crohn's disease, I believe. So, needless to say, it had been 7 years that I'd been struggling with this disease since its first time in the hospital when I was 10. Now I'm 17, not knowing what to do or when this is going to end. And the doctor put me on medication for the first time for it, regular medication, now that they had finally diagnosed me with Crohn's. And so I was taking 8 pills a day. I had to take 6 pills called Pentasa, and I had to take 2 steroids every day, and still was hiding it. People didn't know. I was really active in school and active in class, and had to take all those pills every day during lunch and after school, and was living this double life of pain that people didn't even know was there. So I'm 17. I, of course, during this whole time had been praying for God to heal me, crying out, sometimes doubled over in pain on the bathroom floor in my bed, really angry with God because I believed that God was supposed to heal me. I knew that God was a healer, that Jesus had died for my sins. People prayed for me. People, spoke Isaiah 56 over me, but I still kept seeing these problems, these issues, this pain coming back, and I wondered, God, when is this going to go away? When are you going to heal me, God? When am I going to see the miracles that I read about in the Bible? And when I was 18, I went away to college, still taking 8 pills a day, and came back, was still living this double life, although at this time some people who were close to me knew that I had Crohn's, that I was on medication for it. And I had began to overcome the initial phases of that self-rejection. I was getting more confidence in myself thanks to God showing me who I am in Him, that it didn't matter what other people thought of me, but that my testimony, my identity was being a child of God, somebody who God loved, that even if I couldn't see my healing, that God still loved me and that God could still heal me. And so December 23rd, 2008, I went to a church service at my home church, Valley Kingdom Ministries International in Illinois. And there was a guy who was there preaching, got up in the pulpit. He said, today I'm not going to preach. I came here to praise God because the Lord told me that today somebody's going to get their healing, that today somebody's going to get their breakthrough. And now I'm a seminarian, and that's bad form when it comes to thinking about what's proper protocol in a church place. You know, ministers will never go and have the audacity to say that God told them somebody's going to get their healing, because what if somebody doesn't? But he said that today, if you will praise God like you've never praised God before and receive the healing that God has for you, that because of your new level of praise, God will give you a new level of breakthrough. And that day I decided that it was my day to get my healing. After all these prayers, after watching other people pray for me, watching about prayers on TV, reading books on healing, reading the Bible and praying and believing God for my healing, I praised God that day like I never had, till I literally lost my voice. I screamed to the top of my lungs. I walked out of that place believing that I was healed. And since that day, I have never taken another pill, and I have never had stomach pains again related to Crohn's disease. God healed me supernaturally that day, December 23rd, 2008. And I actually have as a testimony, as a memoriam, these are my pills. I still have them from 2008 and haven't taken one since that day. And shortly after then, I stopped having stomach pain. I stopped having the bleeding. I stopped having the swelling, because God had completely healed me supernaturally from Crohn's disease. And I believe that God can heal anyone because he healed me. That he's faithful. That if you're willing to wait for him, that it took me 7 years from the time I was a little kid, and really 9 years suffering with a disease, with an illness, that God was still faithful to heal. That it took that long, but God still did it. And the day when you get that healing, when God gives you your breakthrough in that thing that you've been waiting about for years and years, thinking that it would never come to pass, you give him glory and you give him praise, because he's able to do it, and he will do it for you. If he did it for me, he can do it for anyone. And since that day, I've seen so many people healed from so many different things. And so I wanted to take this time to share my testimony at the request of a friend, that I share my testimony getting healed from Crohn's disease and getting healed from the self-rejection that caused it, the rejection that I felt from other people and from my own self, as well as the medical issue, that God heals us not just spiritually, but he heals us emotionally. He heals us mentally, and he can still heal us physically. And I'm a living testimony to that. Healed from Crohn's disease after suffering with it for 9 years. 7 years from the time it was diagnosed till the time I got my healing. From the time I first had my first surgery to the time I got my healing. And God did it for me, so he can do it for you. If you'll believe and trust, he's faithful. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Just hold on to faith that God is able to do what he said he would do. That he said in his word, I would above all that you would prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. The trick is you have to have your soul prosper first. That's that love place with God, that relationship. Have your soul prosper, and let the rest of your life see the prosperity of God's healing. That we lay hands and heal the sick because we believe Jesus is still in the business of doing miracles. And so that's my testimony.